Welcome into South Philly Sauce, an Audacy original, brought to you by 94 WIP and Jack Daniels. Ashlyn and Alec here, getting you ready for some weekend games, a busy weekend for the Flyers, and recapping a save of the homestand. There's a lot going on with the Flyers lately. Last we talked to, we were at practice. It was the first practice for Jamie Drysdale. And now we have his first game to recap. And Al, it really could not have gone better. The Flyers, they went in a shootout over Montreal, a really exciting game. And the coolest thing I thought for me when I was down there ringside doing hits about Jamie Drysdale is really anytime he was on the ice, you heard the fans supporting him. They were chanting his name. They were cheering for him, got an assist on a power play goal. His impact was felt immediately.
Yeah, I think that was the most important thing, the fan appreciation, I guess we call it right away. But as important is he moved really well. The power play looked good with him. And that's 3 games in a row with the power play. So there's also I think there's an excitement level with bringing in the new player. So I think that was seen on the bench and in the crowd. So, and they'll need it on this, Ashlyn, they'll need it on this road trip.
Yes, they will. And something else that we talked a ton about in the post-game show, and it got a little shadowed because of Drysdale's debut, but Sam Ersson in overtime in shootouts, he is just excellent. You feel so confident when the Flyers get to that point when he's in shootouts, and he only has given up shootout goals to TJ Oshie and Johnny Gaudreau. So pretty good stuff from him. And he's so common there. And he got the Flyers that win. And you had Sean Couturier, he only needed 1 goal to score the shootout. And Flyers are getting pretty confident when it gets to overtime.
Complete reversal from 3 years in a row like this. So, and I think as important as this tremendous, shootout situation was the fact that there were 2 really odd goals scored against him. And then he just dug in to the point where, and he's not the most, he's not an egomaniac. For him to say after the game, I thought we had some real mental toughness. So I think that's where it showed up when you give up those goals. So basically, yeah, he had to be perfect afterwards, right through a shootout, and he was. So I mean, for goaltenders, that mental toughness is at least a quarter of their whole makeup. That what goes on, and he's really become mentally tough,
especially in shootouts. And I really like for the Flyers because I think they've developed we always talk about the difference from last season to this season, but I've seen it develop even this year. Is for the longest time, the Flyers did not have a come from behind win. If they didn't start fast, they were doomed at the beginning of this year. And now you're seeing more and more the past couple of wins, they're giving up quick starts, which is kind of unlike them. They haven't done that all year. And we're seeing that now a couple of times where boom, you're down 2-0. And you feel those thoughts creeping in of, oh, here we go again. They're doomed. But they have a lot of come from behind wins probably the past 3 weeks that don't make me feel like that anymore.
The come from behind and the fact that they were come from behind wins on flukes. Like, I mean, to have tips like that or, off your own player and in, so a fluky goal to come back and then not get down. I think that they were real, I guess the word is fragile all the time. And I think they've lost that so that they're not such a fragile team anymore. They kind of can, okay, we'll take care of this. We've got guys now that we can trust. And it's not, and a lot of it is Sean Couturier has made such a big difference in what happens when they get in stress situations. He's a guy that can handle that stress. And he's also a guy, there are guys you put on the ice with 2 minutes to go in a game or 40 seconds to go, whatever. And he's become that guy. And you can really see the difference in the team as Couturier's health has got more and more. And he'll take a key face off and he just calms things down on the ice.
Yeah, and I think for the Flyers to be in the conversation of making the playoffs or getting in a wild card spot by the end of this, you're going to have to see them win different ways. And we're starting to see that. We're starting to see that process that they can have of the blowout win, the come from behind win, different guys making key appearances in games. And Owen Tippett was one that stood out to me in overtime. I saw on Twitter the fastest top speed of a single player this season was that breakaway for him in overtime where he slams it to the net. I think he was going 24 miles per hour, and it looks like it because we were watching on TV going, this guy's insane. He's skating so quickly, but he was an impact in overtime for sure.
Yeah, he was. That speed is. I mean, I joked about it. I said I'd like to see him in a shootout, just go full speed.
Slingshot him.
Yeah, we didn't know the speed, but we could just tell. Like, this is crazy, just going into the net. It's frightening for a goaltender to have that bearing down on you like that. So I mean, yeah, he had what, 9 shot attempts.
Mhm.
Probably, I think 5 actually landed on goal or got to the goal. 9 shot attempts, and he's become a. If he can finish, we keep saying that there's potential. It's like this potential there with him. He got the one, but I mean, you're waiting for the breakout game, the Hattie or the Doug, multiple goal game to come, and
Mhm.
and everybody sees it. They see the skill level, they see the speed, and it's like, or it's there. Just let's get it untapped,
Right.
and I do think he can untap that just with raw power. He's a more powerful player than he thinks, to go in and to back people off. And if not him, as everybody else is backing off, you see what speed does, that drop pass behind.
Mhm.
So I think they'll. I think in the future he's going to be a huge element. As soon as he gets that cap off it to say this is a 35, 40 game goal scorer.
Yeah, and he's almost forcing it right now, but I don't want to say forcing it like clutching the stick too tight, forcing it in a good way because he's just making his presence known. I keep going back to that overtime example where he's slamming into the net, but he was not going to be denied. He was going to get to that net front presence, and we're seeing that a lot more lately for Owen Tippett. And I thought another really cool thing that's getting a lot of traction on social media is just how the Flyers have handled this week. We're getting asked everywhere. I went out to dinner with 2 girlfriends last night who aren't Flyers fans. And they're like, what happened this week? I heard all about it in my co-working space about the Flyers. And that was really cool to hear that people that don't follow hockey or aren't necessarily sports fans wanted to know what happened with this trade. And they wanted to know about Jamie Drysdale. And I thought the Flyers offering to fly his family out for the first game was a really cool gesture that probably didn't even need anyone to know about, but Jamie mentioned in his post-game interview, and a lot of people said the Flyers right now are just doing the right thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people beyond Flyers, I think it really resonated that a kid didn't want to be in Philly, and so
Mhm.
okay, we'll do something about it, and we'll do it quickly. So it was a pretty unique situation with a player that unless you're a real hardcore hockey fan, you didn't even know who Drysdale was. I mean, for us in the business, I mean, he's a real good player. Playing in Anaheim, though, bad team out west. Who's heard of him?
Yeah.
But everybody that's in hockey sort of knew, this kid's really good. He's been injured, but he's a really good player. And more, I don't even know if it mattered that much. It's just that one guy didn't want to be there, and we did something about it, and we did it quickly.
Absolutely. And I know it's people are pounding the table about Trevor Zegras trying to get him to Philadelphia as well. And I wasn't going to rule it out. It would be a cool situation, a cool trade. Unfortunately, he just suffered a broken ankle and will have surgery. But that was a player really close to Drysdale and Anaheim. Would have been a really cool piece to have. But I think that probably put those rumors to rest.
That might have been too cool a locker room. If you had York and then Drysdale and then you add Zegras with his Michigan goals and Torts, I don't know.
It would be a little much for Torch.
It would have been interesting, but I feel, he's a terrific player and I think good for the league. It's unfortunate that he had that injury to go down because despite his stats not being what they'd hoped or most people had hoped, he's still a guy whenever he comes into town. In the first place, the name is so good.
It's a good name.
It's okay.
Sounds like a hockey player.
Yeah, and then he's got an element to his game that's look at me game part of it. So it's unfortunate for the league that he goes down. I think it would have been I don't know that the Flyers would have been all in on him. But I think it would have been. I think York might have been and Drysdale might have been, but I don't know if the entire Flyers organization would have been in on him.
Yeah, and you have to wonder what you have to give up for him. And we're going to have an interview coming out soon on NBC Sports Philadelphia with John Tortorella. We did a sit down with him at the animal shelter. And the thing that stood out most to me is we started talking about the trade deadline. And he brought up how hard this trade deadline is going to be for the Flyers because they are going to move pieces, is basically what he said. And he hinted that it's going to be older pieces, that this locker room is trying to get younger. But he mentioned how hard this will be because this locker room is so tight. And he just said it goes back to when he started coaching, the best advice he was given is you can't fall in love with these guys, that you have to remember it's a business, but kind of hinted there will be some movement, which was interesting because for a long time, I wasn't sure you could break up this locker room in fear you might screw it up.
Yeah, well, I learned a long time ago. It's like they're if you look at it in terms of relationships, it's boyfriends and girlfriends, not husbands and wives.
Yeah.
So you just that's what you're dealing with here. And I think the fact it's going to hurt because a guy like Walker, who I kind of think they're going to keep, but he'd be a good trade piece. Stahl. I mean, they've got guys that
Stahl, Paling, Delorier.
I don't think Paling's going to go anywhere. I don't, but I mean, if he gets you something, that's going to be an issue here. I feel really bad for that because he really has fit in so well.
Right.
But I mean, you've got guys that everybody likes now, and you may have to break it up for the future, and that's going to be a difficult thing because Tortorella really wanted a tight locker room, and he got one, and he engineered one, I guess you could say. Yep. And to take it apart a little bit. So I'm real curious on exactly how well, if they're going to make the playoffs, they'll be at the trade deadline. But I don't think Danny Briere is going to let it alter his overall plan. So I think some of these veterans, I think they kind of knew the deal at the beginning of the season, and in the best and in their best situation, they move on to a cup contender.
Yeah, it's part of the business. So it's something we're going to keep our eye on, but it's kind of, you're starting this conversation of what's going to happen here. And we wondered at the beginning of the year when we talked about the trade deadline, a lot was going to have to do with where the Flyers were. And this is a pleasant surprise that they're in the conversation. And you got to think that slightly hinders your outlook of what you want to do. We have a loss in the sauce. I forgot. We haven't done one in a while. My lost in the sauce, and man, he's lost. We haven't talked about him in a month, is Noah Cates, who has a broken foot and has been out of the lineup for a little over a month. He was supposed to be out 6 to 8 weeks. 6 weeks is this week. So not really helpful as we don't know when he's coming back. John Tortorella was asked about him last week. No timetable, but the man really isn't good with injuries. He never really tells you anything.
No.
He's not a doctor, and I get him. So he's lost Noah Cates right now. You got to think he's coming back shortly, and I'm curious what happens when he does come back, how they fit him in this lineup, who sits to get him playing time. So I'm curious, but they could use him at the point when he comes back.
Yeah, they could use him as defensively especially, and so I think that would play into my loss in the sauce, Bobby Brink, who has hit a wall.
You think he's the one that sits?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to. I think there's going to be some. Well, Atkinson too, but Brink is a young player who hasn't. He's numerically has played this number of games between two teams one year, I believe. But really, the every other night situation and what's gone on, and he's not the biggest guy. So I think he's sort of hit a wall here in terms of his performance level on the ice. So he's lost a little bit for me, and I think when Cates comes back, that he'll be one of the candidates that's you're going to miss a game here and there.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think that would be a tough decision. I got to think you lean towards Cam Atkinson. Well, really both, but I would think you have to give Noah Cates a chance to produce and see what he's got, see how he rehabbed, and if Cam Atkinson and Bobby Brink aren't doing anything for you, then those are probably
the guys. Yeah.
All right, Al. So up next, the Flyers, they are on the road again. They were home for a good bit. It was nice. It was calm. Got back in your routine. And now you're back on the road. You got at Minnesota, at Winnipeg, and at St. Louis. All eyes will be on that second one. That is this weekend. That's on Saturday night. Flyers play Friday night as well. But that Jets team, man, I was just looking at it. Only 9 losses this season, 60 points atop the Western Conference. They're a scary team. And really, you look at Minnesota and St. Louis and you say, all right, below the Flyers, at least in the standings. But the Flyers have to show up all 3 of these games to have a chance.
Yeah, you got teams with new coaches. You've got St. Louis team just beat the Rangers. So kind of getting going again now. So this is a really difficult trip. Winnipeg's a team that got a defensive structure after they made trades that looked like they were going to be lesser of a team, but they got some defensive structure. And so now the league's kind of crazy right now. The 3 best teams, the hottest teams are up in Canada, Vancouver, Edmonton, and Winnipeg. And Winnipeg is now Winnipeg's a weird team. It's like when everybody thought they were going to do well, they kind of tanked a bit, and then everybody writes them off, and there they are.
Yeah.
And so I mean, they're hitting them, and just the dates of the day. I mean, the number of games and the number of days hurts.
Yeah.
And we'll be doing a St. Louis game while the Eagles are playing. While the Eagles are
It's gonna be
playing,
the most viewed game of the year.
being like, all right. So I mean, they have to. The coaching staff's going to have to generate an emotional response for this team for these games. That we had a nice homestand, we got the energy of a trade. We're bringing in a player without losing a player, but we can't let it slip with these 3 games just because they're not divisional foes. They have to approach it that way. Otherwise, they'll be lost in the sauce by the time they come back to Philadelphia.
Exactly. The standings are so tight right now. So you got to just stay afloat at this point. And speaking of staying afloat, that's a bad transition. Anyways, the Kevin Hayes, we didn't even get to talk about it. The post-game press conference, and you want to talk about Flyers making national media this week? That was everywhere on social media. Torts' blow up on the reporter about the Kevin Hayes rumors. We got caught laughing on and on air. It was excellent.
It was, and it was. That's just Tortorella, like backing his play.
I loved it. Yeah,
player, even a past player. It's like he's a cool study in coaching. It's like you can't criticize I can criticize my players, and I can harshly criticize.
And I do it often. Yeah.
But when you do it, I've got their backs, even if they're a guy I have problems with over in St. Louis. And I don't know the ins and outs of the story. I know it was the reporter reported that somebody told him something, that Hayes might have been involved. I find that hard to believe. But I mean, the question is, he goes out and reports it. If he in fact have to believe him that somebody in the organization told him this. But I felt bad for Kevin because he really got dragged into it. And he's been pretty open about it. I mean, those BC guys are fairly tight. So, he hung out. I think he golfed with them once or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, part of an alumni, it's sort of normal. Those guys, they're a bit of a pack. But I don't think
it's like you listen to your peers or your coworkers. But the story is if you're given that advice, that's up to you whether you take it or not.
Yeah, but I never heard him really gripe about anything out loud. No. I mean, if he, it's a stretch for me to think that he would do something like that, a real stretch. So I just think it was bad information that was given to the reporter.
Right. And Torts stuck up for Kevin Hayes there, and they're going to see Kevin Hayes on this trip. So I'm sure there'll be some stories coming out of that as well, but not boring in Flyers land this week. I'll give you that.
Never boring.
No. Especially this week. And that's how Philly Sauce and Audacy Original, brought to you by 94 WIP and Jack Daniels. We'll see how this road trip goes for the Flyers this week, and we'll recap it early next week. Have a great weekend.